Hello all, and welcome to the first in a series of 4 webinars hosted by the IRT. Tonight's webinar is Inside IRT's Admissions Process Webinar 1 Overview. Leading the session tonight is myself and my colleague Leslie. So my name is Brittany Zorn. I am the Arts and Sciences Programs Specialist here at the IRT, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'll let Leslie introduce herself.
I'm Leslie Godo-Solo. I'm the Education Program Specialist here at IRT. A proud alum of IRT, class of 91. This is my 21st year with the organization, and I use she, her pronouns.
Way to show me up.
It's a pleasure to have you all on this call tonight with the two of us. If you intend to make all actually there are 3 more calls, 3 more webinars, it will be me and Brittany that you see from now on. Just so, FYI.
And just to match Leslie's introduction, I will say that I'm also an IRT alum, class of 2013, and I'm in my 7th year working for IRT, which is wild. Okay, so on tonight's agenda, we are going to give you an inside look into not only our whole admissions process, but also the application, the IRT application itself over the course of all 4 of these webinars. And so tonight in particular, we're going to focus on looking at what are the components of the application? What do these pages look like? What are the requirements of applying to the IRT? Are there any special or additional considerations an applicant should know? We will overview our evaluation process and the rubric that we use. We'll talk specifically about the component of our evaluation rubric, which is focused on the mission match between IRT and our applicants. We'll then give you the rest of the webinar schedule for the next 3 webinars, as Leslie introduced in our intro, and then we'll give you the how-to of actually submitting an application and where to go for more info. Okay, so the IRT website is going to be your best friend. Yes, thank you for that note in the chat here. Hold on one moment, friends, as we turn on closed captioning and live transcripting for everyone. Perfect. Okay, now that feature is available if you were looking for it before and didn't find it. So the IRT website is going to be your best friend or one of your greatest resources through your application process to the IRT. The website is where you can find a link to the inquiry form, the link to the application portal itself, where you can find this webinar schedule and all the Zoom links, and where you can get a preview of the required essays that are part of the IRT application. So a lot of important and then also basic information about the application process is available on the website. We're going to go there and look at the website so that if you haven't yet been and you haven't checked it out, okay, we have to start a new share. Brittany. You'll get to see what it looks like. So this is not the website. Hold on one moment. So this is the website. And if I was more prepared, it would have already been up for you all. So this is the homepage. You can see some basic information about the history of the program, listen to a blog post with our executive director, read our program highlights, and learn a little bit more about what we offer. But for the purposes of today's webinar, we're going to focus on the application page, which is right up here under the header. You see these menu items or these page navigation items all right here. We're going to click on application. And 2 things in particular we want to highlight on this page for you are the inquiry form, which is this link where it says click here. and the actual IRT application, which is this button which says apply to IRT. So all of you right now, or at some point during this webinar or this evening, if you have not already, should go to the website and fill out this inquiry form here. This inquiry form is a way for you to not only get on our radar as a prospective applicant, but it's how you receive your login credentials for the actual IRT application itself. So once you fill this out, you'll be on our admissions and recruitment listserv. You'll get updates specific to the admissions process and the recruitment season. I promise we won't spam you with like regular newsletter stuff. It's like truly just related to the admission cycle and updates about the application portal, etc. And so in addition to receiving those emails about the admissions process, you receive an email confirming, hey, thanks for signing up. Here's your password for logging into the IRT application. You'll use this email address, which you put in the form. So this is an important step. And it's also a great way for you to make sure that you are staying clued in over the next few weeks. Now, once you've done that and you get your credentials, you will also receive a link to the IRT application in that email. But if you ever lose that email or are just like looking for the IRT application, you can come back to this page on the website and you can click on the button, apply to IRT. And this is where you would log into your actual application. You can see I've been a beta tester for the application in the past, and my temporary credentials are already in here. And so this page, this application page on the IRT website is a great place. The last thing I'll just scroll through quickly is we have, some requirements, eligibility, how to prepare, and the actual essays, as we mentioned, that you can review before even opening the application. All righty, let's go back to our presentation. Be sure to check your spam and junk folders once you fill out that inquiry form in case the automatic email response went there instead of to your inbox. If you ever forget your password, you can follow the prompt, like your password for the actual application. Once you receive those credentials, you can follow the prompts in that email or in the actual login page itself for forgot password or reset password beneath the place where you enter your credentials on the application portal page. And the last thing to say about the application itself right now is that as you complete each page of the application, you are able to save your progress and log out, which is why these credentials are so important, because it allows you to save your progress. So you don't have to sit down and do the application all in one fell swoop.
There are approximately 10 different pages within the application, and these are points of information that we're going to be seeking from you on your application. So they include the basic information, which is your name and address and the school you've attended and your GPA and so forth. There's program information about your university. Personal information is more your name, birth date, that kind of thing. Also, you have a section where we're going to request that you input the names of 3 recommenders and their email address. And through our system, those individuals will be emailed and asked to fill out a form. It's pretty much a Likert scale where they are evaluating on a strongly agree to strongly disagree kind of situation. And then they're also answering a number of short essay questions. We'll look for your educational background. So that's where you put in the school information more specifically. Any schools that you've attended, whether they are community college or undergraduate coursework. Some of you may have a master's already, so you would also input that information. Then there's a section on your graduate school plans in terms of which programs you're thinking about applying to. under this, it may be that you are looking at a field that is education and, well, let's say it this way. You may be torn between two fields. And let's say, for example, perhaps you are thinking about pursuing a MAT, so a Master's of Arts in Teaching, but you are also thinking about a master/PhD in English. Okay, so you can tell us that you're interested in both of those programs. And that's fine. We often have students that are torn between two fields and they apply to those two fields and we call it a split. Okay, it does mean that you're going to have to do both sets of essays. So you're going to do the arts and science essays if you're applying to the master/PhD in English literature. And you're going to do the education essays if you're thinking, I want a Master's of Arts in Teaching to teach high school English. Okay. You also will need to upload your resume and or any transcripts from any of the universities you've attended, whether that's undergraduate or community college, and the master's transcripts as well. And then there's an acknowledgement where you just basically sign off saying that everything that you have put here to the best of your knowledge is truthful, and that information belongs to you, unlike some folks that we have in our Congress.
Yikes.
Yes.
And so just to reiterate my point from the last slide, each one of these pages, you could come in, fill out your applicant information, save and log out. And then you could come back, fill out the program information, save and log out, etc. And so that's why Leslie gave a great breakdown of what to expect in each page. So you could maybe start to plan your time. Oh, I have 20 minutes where I could upload my recommender info. Let me go into the application. Let me put the recommender info in, and then I can log out. Okay, so what are the requirements to apply to the IRT? Very few. There are very few requirements. And in fact, I think we pride ourselves on being rather expansive in who we're willing to work with or who we're able to work with. So the few requirements we have are that you have a major in and or intend to get a graduate degree in the humanities, social sciences, math, computer science, or education fields. We make exceptions for folks all the time because everyone's particular journey and circumstances is unique. And sometimes folks are coming from a really science heavy field like biology, but they're trying to teach science at the K through 12 level. And so, while technically we don't have it here in our requirements that we work with folks who've majored in a hard science, with your goals aligned with our overall program support and the graduate fields that we are able to support you with, we would be able to work with you. So if you're unsure if your particular circumstances, like your undergraduate degree or previous master's degree and your intended graduate degree are aligned with IRT's ability to work with you, if you're not clear, feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to Leslie, or reach out to the general IRT mailbox, and someone will get back to you to clarify or to have a conversation about your specific circumstances. We also have a GPA requirement, 3.0 for an undergraduate degree and a 3.5 for any graduate or advanced degree. Once again, we make exceptions all the time. Sometimes life prevents us from performing at our best, and so our GPAs suffer, and that's not necessarily representative of what you're capable of in a graduate program. And so again, if you're wondering if you can still apply even though you have a 2.8 for your overall GPA in your undergraduate degree, or if you had one semester where you had a 3.0 in your graduate degree and you're wondering if that disqualifies you, just reach out and we're happy to talk through your specific circumstances. One big aspect of the program that we put in the requirements here is that the best applicants and the most successful applicants are open and willing to apply to 7 to 12 institutions within the IRT consortium. Again, we're pretty flexible with these requirements. Things happen that prevent people from being able to apply to 7 schools. Sometimes folks have particular niche interests within a discipline that make it difficult to identify 7 programs within the IRT consortium of 42 graduate institutions that would be a good fit for you. There's all sorts of reasons why this can be a challenge for folks. We're very happy to be flexible and adaptable, but you just have to communicate with us, like what the concerns are or what the limitations are, why maybe finding that 7 minimum of graduate schools within the consortium would be a challenge. And you'll get to work really closely with an IRT advisor when you're admitted to the program to determine the perfect number of schools and the perfect range of schools for you and your goals and your, needs, whether that's like geographically or family wise or whatever the case may be. However, to maximize your success, this is the range we recommend. And so applying broadly, like across the country to different geographic regions, applying to different kinds of institutions, and applying to about a dozen is our best wisdom. So if you're willing and open to that, we'll be a great fit for you. And then the last thing that we have as a requirement is that you are seriously considering a career in teaching, counseling, or administrating in education, in working in an educational institution or a closely related institution in some capacity. Once again, we're very flexible. We make exceptions for folks all the time. We've had people who've really made a case why their interest in urban planning is deeply tangential to educational issues, and they have a background in education and their research is incorporating methods and theories from education, and so they really are actually aligned with our mission and values. Okay, if you can make that case, if we can have that conversation, we're willing to work with you. So moral of the story, a few requirements that we're willing to bend if you advocate for yourself and are willing to have a conversation with someone in the office.
So additional considerations, and by this we mean things that you should also think about as you think or as you contemplate whether or not IRT is going to be a good fit for you. You should know that there is no application fee, so we do not charge any student for any of the services that we provide. There is no citizenship requirement. We often do work with students who are from other countries. Most often they've attended universities in the United States, but not always. So we're working with a number of students who are from England, for example. There are no residency requirements, so you do not have to be a resident. We in fact work with undocumented students, DACA students. It makes things a bit more difficult in terms of which schools you may be able to apply to, but again, we do not hold that against any individual, and we work with students even though they may not be residents of the United States. There's no age limit regarding the students that we're willing to work with. We have students that are right out of undergraduate to students who have been teaching or working, full-time jobs, who have now decided to come back and pursue their master's or PhDs. So there are no limitations there. You can be fully employed. However, we will want you to carve out an hour a week to be able to talk to definitely your statement of purpose advisor, who will talk with you over the course of 8 weeks, once a week. And you also will have to carve out some time to talk with a school list advisor. That's the person who will help you come up with your school list, but you won't talk to that advisor weekly. There's 4 or 5 touch points and opportunities to converse with that person, and you need to be able to do that. typically and ideally during our working hours. But again, as Brittany has said, we're often very flexible. We realize that people are, we're on the East Coast, but you may be on the West Coast. And again, with those students who are not from the United States, like in the case of the young lady I worked with who's from England, you know, we had to adjust our schedules accordingly. So she had to do a little bit of juggling and I had to do a little bit of juggling, but then we were able to fall into a place that was good for both of us. And so we met at that same time every week. Now things come up, you know, she may have had to stay late for something, but as long as we're communicating, you know, we usually can work out any problems. Some of our students are caretakers, so they are, or their parents, or they're both, they're caretakers and parents. So they may have their own children that they're raising, but they also may be taking care of their mother, their father, a grandparent. And as long as you can do, you know, the work that we need you to do and make steady progress, we're not going to have any problems. And you do not need to be currently enrolled in a degree program or taking classes. So maybe maybe you just graduated. What is this? This is January, so you wouldn't have just graduated, but maybe you're going to graduate. You're going to graduate this May or June, and you're going to take a gap year off. We can still work with you. That's not going to be an issue. Okay, so I hope that each of these is clarified now. If not, feel free to, you know, send any of your questions in the chat.
Sorry, I was muted. So I was about to go off on a roll and had myself on mute. Okay. So now you know how to, like, where the application is, how to get your credentials to log in, what are the components of the application, what are the requirements, and then what are some additional application considerations. So now we're going to shift from the what of the admissions process to the how. You know, how do we evaluate you? What are the categories we look for? And so we have 4 major categories across which we evaluate all of our applicants. Those categories are their overall fit with the IRT mission, the strength of your application essays, the quality of your recommendations, and the content of your academic background. And I'll just shamelessly pitch the next 3 webinars in this series, in the Inside IRT Admissions Process webinar series. Today we'll talk about mission. Next week, the same day, same time, Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard, we're going to talk about essays, do a deep dive into what are the essay prompts, what constitutes a strong essay. The following week, we're going to do recommendations. Again, what constitutes a strong recommendation? What does IRT's recommendation form look like? And the following week after that, we're going to do academic background. What do you mean? What makes up one's academic background? What are you looking for? Okay, and so we evaluate all 4 of these categories on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 is excellent, 4 is above average, 3 is average, 2 is below average, and 1 is poor. And we have developed a rubric that we use internally for these categories, you know, to help us norm around what does it mean if there's an excellent fit with the IRT mission? Okay, it means these things. What does it mean if there's an excellent essay? It means these things. And so we've tried to standardize a little bit this process so that from year to year, we're taking out the subjectivity of it and making it a little bit more objective and consistent across our admissions evaluations.
So the first area we're going to discuss is the IRT mission. What do we mean by that? And what are we looking for when we're evaluating students' applications as it pertains to the IRT mission? So ideally, your field of interest addresses some issue of inclusion, diversity, equity, and social justice. So, what issues are you looking at? What problem do you want to solve related to diversity and social justice, and inclusion? We're also looking for students to demonstrate consistently throughout their application, their value of an IRT mission. So this can be done in terms of the organizations that you belong to, or the research that you're conducting. Maybe it's on diverse populations or populations that are excluded in our society. Those are a couple of ways in which you demonstrate the IRT mission in your application. You can also demonstrate the mission through past, current, and future work contributions, innovations that you want to make in the field. So what have you been working on? What issues have been raised that you now want to address as a master's or PhD candidate in the future? And do those deal with any of these areas, again, of inclusion, diversity, equity, and social justice? Perhaps you're wanting to look at best practices of inclusion or diversity. And then finally, direct and long-term experience working with students of color. So have you had some experience working with students of color? And for some students, you may just be coming to that. That is okay. I know it says here direct and long-term, but again, as Brittany has said, we're pretty flexible. And if we see that there is an interest to impact these areas, and you're just coming to that, but as you talk about your research, you are actually articulating that you want to continue to do that, you're going to be the exact fit for IRT, and you're going to demonstrate that you are interested in the mission that we put forward here.
And the only thing I want to add is that I wanted to be clear that when on the last slide, when I said that we evaluate on a scale of 1 to 5, this slide right now, what Leslie just described for you all, constitutes a 5 in the IRT mission category, right? So when we talk about, can I go back? Where's my? I don't think I can go back. I don't have my little. I was trying to go back to the previous slide, but I don't have my little tools up. It doesn't matter. So when we said like mission is one category, this is what a 5 in mission looks like, or what we are looking for when we say we're evaluating on a 5. In the essays webinar, we'll share this is what a 5 looks like for essays. And the recommendations webinar, we'll share this is what a 5 looks like for recommendations. So we're actually giving you like the language and the characteristics of that top scoring category for each of these components, because I don't think that we made that clear. All right, and so I've been shamelessly pitching these throughout, and now you can see again that we are going to do 3 more webinars in this series. We're doing this one today, number 1, overviewing the process. Next week is the essays, the week after is the recommendations, and the following week is the academic background, which is made up of your resumes or CVs, your transcripts, and your GPA.
So how do you begin to actually submit an application? Well, the first thing you want to do is attend an informational session online. This counts as one of those. When you go to our website, you will also see that we've done a previous kind of overview. Correct me if I'm wrong. So there's already a webinar on there that just talks about IRT more generally.
It's actually called, just for the clarity, for the sake of clarity, it's actually called IRT Info Session 2023-24. So when we say, attend an info session, this is certainly an informational webinar, but really the one that's going to give you the bulk of an understanding about IRT's program offerings and what the actual program does is the one that's called an info session. So that's available on the website, as Leslie said.
Yes. And then this series This is the first of the inside the admissions process. And we'll have 3 more of those sessions that were on the previous slide for you. So you want to take part in all of those, but of course you definitely want to get on and do the inquiry, because as Brittany said, that is going to give you the credentials to start an application, but it also is going to put you in our listserv so that you receive the announcements that the application is due in a month. Now it's due in 2 weeks. Now it's due in 3 days. And finally it's done and it's closed. So you want to make that March 1st deadline. So you want to submit, begin to submit an application by going to the website address that's listed here. The application, you will have to upload a resume and or CV. You don't have to upload both. One is fine, one or the other. You're going to upload unofficial transcripts. So you don't have to send us any transcripts. You don't have to contact your schools. You don't have to pay for transcripts to be sent to our office. You can upload copies of your transcripts from all credit earned institutions, including undergraduate and graduate, community college, study abroad programs, and any summer coursework. We want to see all of that. All of that together paints a picture and lets us know what kind of academic background you've had and whether or not it will set you up to do the graduate work that you want to do. You also have a series of short essay questions, and they will deal with your professional history, your research experience, theoretical frameworks in your particular field, and your goals for future graduate study. So what is it that you want to do? What's been your research experience thus far? For those of you who are interested in education, we'll ask about your teaching experience. Yes. You also will need to submit the 3 academic recommendations. At least 2 of those should be from professors who have had you in class, who have actually given you a grade. And then the 3rd letter of recommendation could be from, say, a work supervisor, or, if let's say you want to go on for a master's in student affairs and you've been working in the multicultural office, that person could be your 3rd recommender. Because they're your supervisor, so they could talk to your desire to go to graduate school and to major in higher ed, for example. An important note is once you submit your application, you can no longer make any changes. Yes, the only exception to that is amending the recommender's request. So for example, if you put in the name of a recommender and you find out that for whatever reason they can't write the letter of reference, then you want to let us know that you need to change that and put in a different name. And again, our system will prompt that individual. And in past years, for many years, we required an interview. And as of this cohort, this year, we are no longer requiring the interview. So instead of the 5 components of evaluation, you're only going to be evaluated on 4, and it will not include an interview. So if you've talked to somebody and they say, well, I was interviewed, we're no longer doing the interview.
And that's all we have for you this evening. An overview of how to apply, where to get the information you need, what is required to apply, and what is forthcoming. So this is where you can reach out for additional info. The website again, the direct number to our office, although in this quasi post-pandemic half work from home world, we're not really consistently in the office, or people take different days in and out of the office to work remotely or not. So email is truly the most efficient way to get a hold of us. The general IRT inbox, which multiple people have access to, or me and Leslie directly. Any of these is totally efficient and viable and you'll get a response in a couple days. And then you have all of our social media spaces along the bottom as well. You can find IRT on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn at IRT Andover. All right. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, qualms, queries, inquiries, inquisitions, requests, ruminations, thoughts? Running out of words to use. Anything at all, reactions? Could be a personal question, you know, I don't mean like hyper personal, but it could be like a unique question to you, something you're like, oh, this is my situation. Go ahead, Aquile.
Yeah. So how many people are typically in a cohort?
How many people are typically in the cohort?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. So that's a great question, actually. We probably should include some general statistics about the admission, the scope of admissions in the webinar going forward. So we've typically received about 250 applications, and we've admitted about 130 scholars. That those numbers definitely, like, give or take maybe 30, you know, or 20 in either direction, depending on different years and like over the duration of the program. But this year we would be looking to admit a cohort of about 140 or 130, 140.
Agreed. 130, 140.
Really good question. Let's make a note to include that in the webinar for next year.
So our next question, I'm going to read the question so that it's apparent for folks who will view this later what the question was. So we have a student. The question is, if you have applied to graduate programs previously and have not been admitted, is it considered a negative feature of your application? I would say no. And we have definitely worked with students who have not been admitted for a variety of reasons. And they often do get admitted with us. Oftentimes students have applied on their own. They may have applied last minute and just kind of thrown the essay together, and you know, it's like, oh yeah, you know, let's see what happens kind of thing. But as we mentioned earlier, particularly with your documents, your statement of purpose, that's the document where you talk about why you want to pursue a particular field, your research interest, what problem you want to solve. You're going to have an advisor who will work with you for 8 consecutive weeks. So they'll meet with you, you'll send a draft, they'll critique it, and then you'll talk about it. And you'll do that a total of 8 times. Sometimes students may be applying to programs that are not exactly the right fit, and so they're not admitted. But nobody's going to call you and say, hey, you really should have thought about X, Y, and Z program instead of this one. Your interests fall more in those programs than it did in this. They just don't have the time to call and tell you that. Most people. Sometimes somebody may call and say, hey, we really liked your application, but we think you're a better fit for X program.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't happen that often. Sometimes a school isn't accepting any applications for that year, and hopefully they've posted that. But we did find in the pandemic, when the pandemic first started, you know, quite a few programs decided to not have a cohort that year, and they kind of regrouped and they consolidated programs and so forth and so on. And we literally had some students who had applied on a Monday, and then on Tuesday they got the email that program was not accepting applications. So it really can depend on, there's a variety of reasons of why a student may not have gotten admitted. And what we're going to do is we're going to help you to put together the best application. We're going to help you with blind spots that you may not have thought about, to ensure that you have a strong application. And then on the tail end of that, once you get in, because you're going to get in, we are going to help you negotiate for full funding as best that we can. And so that means things like if school A and B accepts you and you get accepted at B and they give you more funding, what is an A giving you that you can go back and ask for? Okay. And, or you got into one school and you got into this other school, but the school you really want to go to, the award is, I'm saying the same thing. The award was not that good. So you can say to them, well, over here, I got healthcare. Is that a possibility at your institution? So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think the conclusion to this is it's not a negative at all. I think if anything, we attract scholars who've applied previously and been unsuccessful, and then they are successful in their second time. But we have a few hands raised, so I'll go ahead with Amber as our first hand in the queue.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. I had a quick question, well, kind of two questions, but I'm a studio art major and I'm interested in teaching art at a college level. So like, I guess being a professor, but because of my major, I really didn't have the chance to take a lot of education or like teaching courses. And I wanted to know if that would be like seen as a bad thing on the application.
Okay, a good question. No, in that you want to teach art at the college level, where they would be looking for you to have a ton of college courses, education courses, is if you told us that you want to teach art at the high school level. And we used to work with students who wanted to be K through 12 art teachers and music teachers. But in recent years, because so many public schools have done away with their art and music programs at the high school level, the graduate schools have stopped offering that program and stopped certifying. But if you want to teach art at the college level, so I'm thinking you would be what area so are you a painter? Are you ceramics?
Oh, I'm primarily I do sculpture and painting, but like broader, I wanted to do mixed media or to do like sculpting and painting, mixed media classes like that.
Okay, so you're talking about MFAs or art history? Yeah.
MFA.
MFA, we can definitely help you do MFA. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would like reiterate is exactly what Leslie started saying. If you want to teach at the K through 12 level, there's an emphasis on having coursework or a degree and or significant experience, like working directly with students. And then if you want to teach at the university level, the expectation is that you're an expert in your field. And so it's not the expectation that you are a pedagogical expert. It's not the expectation that you are an expert in teaching, but that you are an expert in your discipline. So that is like the broad difference between teaching at the university level versus teaching at the K through 12. I just wanted to like say that in that way. And then Amber, I think you said you had a second question.
Oh yeah, it kind of ties back into the first one, but as far as like, well, you kind of answered it already, but about teaching experience, like the only real teaching experience I could think of was when I like used to work at a summer camp and did like art classes there. So it isn't really any, I guess, full-on experience learning, teaching in that like sense. So I just wanted to know if that would be seen as a bad thing too, but you kind of answered it already.
Yeah, that's not going to be detrimental to you in any way.
Yeah, and I would say don't sell yourself short. Like, oh, I sort of maybe taught kind of a little bit. Like, Claim that. Like, I was responsible for delivering an art-focused curriculum to a set of summer camp students for 2 months between, June and July or whatever. Like, claim the experience you have, don't diminish it, because even if it's not, you didn't go through some rigorous credentialing program where they taught you about pedagogy and lesson planning. Like, even if it's not that, that doesn't mean it wasn't valuable or instructive, or that you didn't gain skills and insight, or, so sell it, don't shrink it.
All right, thank you.
I would add to Amber, when you're on the IRT website, I would look at the schools in there are 42 schools in our consortium, and I would start to make my way, or better yet, you want to talk to professors about MFA programs, because we don't have a whole lot of them. Like this may be an instance where there might be only 7 or 8 as opposed to 10 to 20. So you want to identify those, you want to know those programs, because what you may want to do is apply to those 7 or 8 MFA programs within the IRT consortium. But then that also may mean that you want to look at MFA programs outside of the consortium.
And certainly if you ever want to talk more about this, leading up to applying or writing your essays, like, reach out.
Thank you.
All right, next in the queue of raised hands is Giselle.
Hi, thank you so much. I kind of had 2 questions. The first question was, I know that this program kind of consists of like advisor support and meeting with your advisor, but I wanted to know if other students had the opportunity to kind of engage with each other and meet with each other. And then my second question was, do you all still offer support with applications outside of the consortium? And then what does that support, like how does that support different versus schools within the consortium? Sorry, that word is hard for me.
Yeah, you're not alone. Consortium is definitely a tough one for many folks. We just say it a lot, so we get a lot of practice. I'll take one and then maybe I'll volley the second one to Leslie. Okay. So the first question was
engagement.
Yeah, I was like, I already forgot what it was because I was triggered by the question. So the question was, do you get an opportunity to connect with other students in the cohort? Yes, and we are like actively in the process of reevaluating or amping up the opportunities that students get to engage with each other. So over the last few years, we've already incorporated some new opportunities for cohort, like inter-cohort engagement, using things like Flipgrid, which is like an online video like question response service, which allows students to like record a 2-minute bio, like a little video, and like then you get to watch everyone else's bio like in the cohort, and you get to respond to each other. And we have multiple group not advising, but like group Zoom sessions. So we have 3 all cohort meetings that happen at the beginning, middle, and end of the program. We have monthly Zoom social hours that are informal spaces for people to just kind of come and chat about what's going on in terms of grad school or life or whatever part in the process we're at. And one of the things we're going to be really intentional about, I think, going forward is helping students create discipline-based like working groups and clusters, so that like everyone who's pursuing an MAT or wants to teach at the K through 12 level is connected. Here's your group chat, or here's your email chain, or here's like your monthly check-in on Zoom, something like this. And so we haven't necessarily done that in the past, the intentional discipline clustering, although the like need for it and the desire for it gets like exponentially stronger over the last few years. So we're like definitely gonna lean into that. So there are some opportunities that we've already incorporated, and we already have our eye on incorporating more opportunities. And then we just are constantly encouraging students to make connections amongst themselves. We provide a lot of contact info, you know, like here's a master list of the cohort with people's fields and their previous institutions and their email addresses. Use this to identify people in your region, people in your discipline, and take the initiative to reach out. We also do some advising around disciplines. So we have like group advising webinars that are like just for applicants in the humanities, just for applicants in higher ed, and for PhDs in education, that sort of thing. So yes, and.
Okay. And the second part, so the first was community engagement, cohort engagement, and repeat.
The second one was, what is the support like for applications to non-consortium schools? Is that different?
Okay. So typically students identify the non-consortium schools on their own, but what I will tell you about their documents is that your documents are going to be in excellent shape for you to apply to, say, UCLA, which is not in our consortium, or for you to apply to Johns Hopkins, for example. And you're going to be in great shape because we have helped you critique all of the documents. Let's say you're applying to 10 schools in the consortium. We've helped you critique all 10 of those schools, the statements of purpose, the resume or CV, your diversity essays, personal essays, and we do a cursory read of your writing sample. So once you've written a statement of purpose for one school, and you do what we call the template is the part of the statement that's the same regardless of where you're applying. Then we move you into the school specific paragraphs. And that's where you say why you want to go to this particular school, who you want to work with. I typically start students by saying, okay, I want you to send me the school specifics of your top 3 schools first, because my feeling is that you've done the most research there, you're most excited about who you're going to work with. There are resources at that institution that are really going to influence and impact the research. So whether that's a library or special collections, or if you're in education, there may be a teaching, center that really does deal with pedagogy and how to teach. So you're going to talk about those resources. Once you've done 10 of those, cranking out the other 2 for UCLA and Johns Hopkins is going to be a breeze. And we'll read those. We'll read them too. If you say, well, Leslie, will you look over those paragraphs? Or Brittany, will you look over those paragraphs? We'll fold them in, with the ones in the, we're not going to say, well, no, those are not consortium. We don't look at those. We'll read, and I should mention also that if you're applying to external fellowships, or you're applying for national fellowships, like give me an example. I can't think of
NSF, Ford.
Yes. As long as we know you also want to critique that, and as long as we have time, like we're not going to have you do a half job with your statements of purpose and then look at your Ford application. It's going to be, you're in good shape with your statements of purpose, and we're going to look at your Ford application essays and help you critique those as well.
I just want to add 2 things to this in terms of like super logistical support. The fee waivers that you get by virtue of participating in IRT are paid by the institution. Like the institution itself agrees to waive your application fee. And so for a non-consortium school, you're not guaranteed a fee waiver because they don't have an agreement with IRT, but you can work with your IRT advisor to talk through how do you seek a fee waiver from this institution, or, have I participated in another program which makes me eligible for a fee waiver? And so that is one practical way that the support is different for applying outside of the consortium. And then the only other thing I want to say about this question is we provide you with a school list spreadsheet where we have columns of important information where you can track information about your programs, which Leslie was talking about, identifying campus resources or institutional resources like special collections or courses or faculty. You can use IRT's spreadsheet, to track the information you're collecting about non-consortium schools as well. So we don't force you to like separate the processes or like have an IRT process and then like a separate non-consortium school process. It's one process. In fact, IRT has no stake in this at all. This is your graduate school application process that you are directing, and you're deciding to pursue this degree. We're just providing you with some helpful information and support and like a timeline of accountability that allows you to apply broadly. So just wanted to offer that framing of like, it's one process. It's one graduate school application process. The logistical differences are mainly around the fee waiver. And as Leslie said, we're willing to read those materials, talk through those applications with you. You just have to make that known. So I just wanted to offer that. And okay, last hand raise with Noel. Nell, say your name for me when you say your question.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's Noel or Noel. Either pronunciation is correct. So similar to the first question asked, and this might be getting ahead of myself, I was wondering for existing IRT candidates, once they've applied to their programs and they've heard back from them, regardless of acceptances or not, what happened? What are the action items for those candidates who might ultimately just not proceed with graduate school? Are they still considered alumni of IRT, and would they be able to apply to IRT again / get their support in the next year?
I love this question, so I want to answer it because I love bragging about this. Yes, you're still considered an alum if you don't matriculate. In fact, you don't even necessarily need to finish the program to be considered an alum. If you are admitted and you work with us for a few months worth of time, and then you get into this and you're talking with me or Leslie or your advisor, and you're like, damn girl, this is a lot, and like I'm doing the most, and I don't know if this is actually going to work out for me this year, we still like include you in our data tracking of alumni, and there is no lifetime cap on the number of times that you can apply and participate in the IRT. I've worked with scholars who've literally participated for like 5 consecutive cycles. And in recent years, we have done away with reapplying for folks who've applied and been admitted. So in almost every instance, when someone withdraws or if they finish the program but don't have a viable offer and don't matriculate, you're able to just participate again within, if it's within a year of participation. So if it's more than a year, you would have to reapply because things change and you get different experience and goals change. But in like 99% of cases, you have a conversation with your advisor and it's like, yeah, of course, we want to support you on your application journey. We exist to just help you do this thing that you were going to do anyway. So there's no like penalties for having the self-awareness to say, this isn't actually my year, or none of these offers are fulfilling all the things that I need in order to be successful, or I didn't get an offer. And so I'm going to do this again and be more informed. Like we celebrate that. That's a win. So yeah, you can participate as many times as you need to, year after year after year. You can go through it, matriculate somewhere, get a degree, come back, go through it again. You can do it, go through, get your degree, immediately come right back. Like we've had all manner of like, what am I trying to say? We've had all like styles of participation again, right? Like re-participation. So all of that is open to you. And really what we center more than anything is closed mouths don't get fed. So you got to let us know what your needs are. You got to be communicative about what you're going through. You got to be willing to have maybe a tough conversation with someone who is, that like you're a tough conversation with your advisor, right? Like someone who you're like owing some work to, or, you feel like obligated to in some way. So that's really all we ask is have a convo. And then I guess the last thing I'll say on this, just for the sake of maybe if you're curious about the what we call post-application season. So everything before you submit your graduate school applications is pre-application season. Everything after you submit your graduate school applications is post-application season. And so, Noel, what you're referring to is like the negotiation phase, the admissions news phase, that's post-application season. We do have scholars every year who don't matriculate for one reason or another. Like I would say like maybe a handful to like a dozen who either get some offers, but they're not funded enough, or they're in places like locations that their circumstances have changed and they actually can't commit to going to that place, or maybe their family circumstances have changed and they're not able to like travel with family or dependents or people who they're taking care of. And so, or, you know, maybe they have not received a single offer. Maybe it was like straight rejections for one reason or another. Maybe that's because the program, the discipline that they were applying to isn't actually the best fit, but we didn't really figure that out until we got to the end of the process. Lots of reasons. So every year it happens that like maybe like, you know, 1 to 10% of the cohort doesn't matriculate. And that's not, we don't consider that a failure. Like we don't track that data as like, the people who didn't make it, you know, like that to us, that's not like you didn't do the process or you weren't successful. It just means that you've gained a lot of information about your goals, about your circumstances, about your capacity, about your professional goals. And that we consider that to all be a net positive in the end. So just wanted to like put that out there. Cool. Any other thoughts, questions, reactions? You're welcome. Good to have you all. Okay, cool. If there's nothing else, we'll see hopefully many of you next week and or in our inboxes in the meantime.
Bye, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.